Apples of Gold in Settings of Silver, Chapter 2, February, Amazing Love, Our Love Story, Jim and Bev. Author's note: about 6 months before Jim passed away, he told me he had started writing our story, but we never had opportunity to finish it together. We had shared the joy of telling it verbally many times and had always intended to put it in written form, but had never taken the time. What a delight it was when I found his part of the story. He had put so many details of the emotions he experienced, and it was precious to hear his perspective once again. How sweet of the Lord to lay this on his heart, so he sat down and captured his experience before he died. I'll share his part before mine, and then do my best to combine the two into how God put us together, bringing order from our chaos and brokenness. Jim's part. I drove my truck to my aunt's house after work. It was 10 o'clock on a Saturday night. She had made some dinner for me. As I was eating, I casually asked her where I might get a haircut, considering I didn't want to go to church looking like a hippie. She said, on Saturday night at 10 o'clock? Wait, you may be in luck. I know a young lady who cuts hair for the grandmas in town. So she gave that young woman a call. After some reluctance, she agreed to cut my hair, although it would cost me $10. In today's prices, that would be like $40. I swallowed hard and said, okay. I was desperate. The Sunday before, while playing my bass guitar in church, I had seen a young lady playing the organ and thought it peculiar that every time I looked at her and smiled, she looked away. I watched her after the service as she picked up a small girl who called her Mommy. Then a man came, put his arm around her, and left the church. I thought no more of it. I detached the trailer from my truck and drove to the house my aunt described. It was a cute little house, not many lights on inside. I approached the door and knocked. To my surprise, the young lady from the organ opened the door. I stepped inside. She motioned me to sit down. Without a word, she started cutting my hair. I apologized profusely for coming so late, for possibly keeping her husband up so late as well. She remarked sharply that she was not married and that she and her daughter lived alone. I felt such a friction between us, and I wasn't sure why. She brushed me off. The haircut was a welcome change, and I thanked her, smiling to break the ice. Then a moment of embarrassment came over me while looking into my wallet. I had forgotten the $2 I spent on food. I'm sorry, but I only have $8. Forget it, she responded. You don't have to pay me anything. Feeling badly, I did the next best thing I could think of and asked, can I take you to lunch after church tomorrow instead? To my surprise and shock, she said, yes, I would love to. I went to church the next morning. Again, I played the bass, and this mysterious woman played the organ. Occasionally, I would look up at her. She seemed to be looking off into space instead of me. Was this the look of wonder, curiosity, or apprehension? Once or twice she glanced and smiled softly. I was asking myself the same question over and over. What have I done? Was it wise asking this woman out on a date? After being left alone and hurt so deeply, the last thing I was seeking was another relationship. But this is just lunch, I told myself. She was very reserved in her conversation while cutting my hair, and I felt she had left out some tantalizing details. Taking her to lunch was like opening a good mystery novel. I figured there was a whole lot more to her story, and my curiosity abounded. After church was over, my heart was looking for a new residence. It was about to jump out of my chest. What do I do? How do I approach her? What do I say? She was always polite to everyone. I enjoyed just watching her move through the crowd, greeting everyone as she moved ever closer toward me. Hello, I said. Are you ready to go? My daughter goes with us, she said. It would be my pleasure. I have a daughter the same age. Can I take her for you? We got in the car and said nothing as we got on the highway. It was a 20-minute drive to the next town where a homey restaurant awaited. Well, here we go. I walked around to open the door for her. I knew in an instant she wasn't accustomed to gentlemen because she began to open the door herself. The restaurant was old and musty smelling. The atmosphere was simple. I offered a chair for her and put her daughter in a high chair. Well, I said, my name is Jim. She said, I know. I realized it was a silly icebreaker. But where do you start? She smiled and said, holding out her hand, Hi, I'm Beverly. Our apprehension began to slowly melt. Feeling more and more comfortable, she began to talk. She told about being in a marriage of abuse and betrayal and running out of state to protect her child. Her beautiful eyes filled with tears as she relived each painful memory. My heart was filled with compassion. I wanted to hold her until it all went away. Now my turn. It went as you have already heard. Dreams lost, plans failed, broken life. She seemed to show the same compassion for me as I did for her. The food finally came, and we sat in silence. Her 2-year-old daughter was hungry too. We didn't say much while eating, but looked into each other's eyes. Her eyes spoke more of her reality than her lips. She was the most caring, loving, and gentle person I had ever met. I wanted to replace in her all that was lost. I wanted to fill her life up with hope and dreams. But what did this mean? I had to see her again. And again? What was I thinking? My mind raced with desire to know more about this fascinating woman, but caution was overwhelming. We finished and walked to the car to head home. I thanked her for a wonderful time. She returned the thanks. I told her it was my pleasure to have had dinner with a lady. She blushed. We talked small talk and laughed on the way home. Taking her to the door, anxiety poured over every cell of my body as I thanked her again and said those most fearful words. "Can I see you again?" "I would be happy to see you again," she responded, almost too excitedly. I said, "Cool. Next Saturday?" "That would be fine," she replied. "Another date?" She seems awfully eager to go out with me again. Suddenly, fear grasped me like a rope taut against my throat. I had some serious doubts and questions. Why did she go out with a perfect stranger? I could have been a deceitful man with wrong motives as far as she knew. And now she happily agrees to see me again. Why did she seem mad when she was cutting my hair? And who is the man that had his arm around her leaving church that first Sunday? She wore a wedding ring. Was she still married but separated? Is she seeing someone else? Many things didn't add up, and I needed to find out. Next Saturday came. My job was slacking off due to decreased shipping volume, so I could take a day off occasionally. I picked her up at 9 o'clock sharp and took off to the nearest shopping mall, 70 miles away. She was captive in the passenger seat. Now was the time for me to address these perplexing questions. "So did you enjoy the dinner date?" I asked. "Why did you go out with me?" "Because I trusted you," she replied. "Trust me?" I chuckled. "You hardly know me." "Oh," she said, "I know you better than you think." And yes, I enjoyed the dinner date very much. I asked the Lord for that date. I was tired of being a third wheel and just wanted to be taken out for me. Just me. So when you asked, I knew it was God's answer. Besides, why am I being given the third-degree treatment anyway? Well, you seemed upset with me while cutting my hair, and then happy about the date. What was I to think? I responded, looking serious. Looking down, she replied, "My ex-husband started some affairs that way, asking girls for haircuts with no intent to pay with money." "So was he the man that took your arm after church? Are you still married?" Looking puzzled but sincere. "Still married?" she laughed. "But you wear a wedding ring," I replied, bristling at her lack of concern for my earnestness. "That was just a friend from church, and he's never acted that way before toward me. He must be afraid that you are competition, and only did that to make you think I wasn't available. I mean, I think he likes me, but," she said, desperately looking for the right words, "I wear the ring to keep men away, to make them think I am married. Can we change the subject?" "Sure." I smiled back at her and offered a brief explanation. "I am afraid. Going out with you is fun, but scary for me because I trusted before, and the trust was betrayed. Thank you for being honest and patient in answering my questions." We shopped for nothing really. I bought her daughter some new shoes, which she thought were cool. She wanted to wear them home. Once on the road, I restarted the conversation. "So how do you know me so well?" "Well," she chuckled, "the town is filled with your relatives." And then she made the most perplexing statement of all when she said, "I asked God to protect me from the things that were not good for me and to give me things that he promised me." Bev's part. Each of us had been married young and were without the tools we needed to choose a partner wisely or live out the marriage covenant. After about 4 years, our respective spouses gave up on our marriages and divorced us, leaving each of us alone. I was living in Montana at the time, and Jim in the Sacramento area. Neither of us had any idea the other existed. We had no way of knowing what God was up to. We were broken, and it took some time for each of us to heal, allowing God to set his plan in motion. After my divorce, my situation was less than ideal. I wasn't sure what I could do to protect my 2-year-old daughter from her father's influence. I wanted to raise her in a Christian home, and his was far from it. Totally unsolicited, an older couple I had gone to church with a few years before just happened to wheel into my house on their Harley as they returned to their home in Idaho from a weekend trip. They gave me their contact information and told me if I ever needed a place to go, they would have room for me and my daughter. Since he managed a wooden toy factory, a job was available for me too. A couple of months later, it was evident I needed a change, so I called them, loaded my car with as much as I could stuff in it, stored the rest with friends, and left for a small town of about 500 people in Idaho. I was a mess. I had a broken heart, devastated emotions, and no hope. My new host had formerly pastored for many years, but had gone through some difficult times in the ministry and had taken some time off to recuperate. The former pastor, now my host and boss, kept telling me he was praying for a husband for me, but I didn't want a husband. That's why I was in this mess to start with. So instead of encouraging me, his statements simply made me mad. On a Friday night, he started in again, telling me he was praying for a husband for me when I thought of a way to get even. I told him that was fine. He could pray for a husband for me, but I was going to pray for a church for him, and we would see who got their prayer answered first. Not highly spiritual, I know, but God has a sense of humor. The very next day, he got a call from a church in Washington State, and when he preached at that church the following weekend, he was hired. They told me I could go with them, and in my less than healthy state of mind, I thought that was probably my best option. 2 weeks later, we arrived in a small town in eastern Washington, and I started getting concerned. Since God had answered my prayer so quickly for this church position to open up, I better get busy making sure I didn't end up with a husband. God and I had some serious conversations. I found Psalm 37:4 that said, "Delight yourself in the Lord, and he will give you the desires of your heart." I prayed, "Father, so far my desires in the marriage department have gotten me into a lot of trouble. I think this verse also means that if I delight in you, you will put healthy desires in my heart that you can fulfill without hurting me, because I don't even know what to pray for regarding a husband. I'm just going to let you put things in my heart that will help me know when I see the right one. I'll just keep a list of what comes to my heart and see where that goes." Over the next 3 or 4 months, I developed a list that seemed absurd. It started with the usual idea of someone who loves God, loves me, loves my daughter, and is willing to adopt her, then moved to more specific things like he needs to be called to ministry, have been married before, so my divorce wouldn't hinder his ability to minister, but couldn't have been the one to initiate a divorce because I wouldn't be able to trust him. That's where the list went a little crazy. I put that he had to be musically inclined, play the saxophone and bass guitar, like motorcycles, have a cute, sporty car, and of all things, have curly red hair. I figured this list would be so difficult, God wouldn't be able to meet my desires, and I would remain single and safe. I didn't tell anyone about the list because I thought they might not understand, and I hid it in the bottom of my jewelry box where no one would ever find it. Imagine my consternation when I was minding my own business playing the organ in the small church I was attending, only to look down at the front row and find a handsome young man with curly red hair playing the bass guitar. No wonder I jerked my head away when I caught him looking at me and smiling. No one else knew about my list or grasped that he was its perfect fulfillment, but I did. To make things even more complicated, I had asked the Lord for a dinner invitation where I wouldn't be a third wheel, but would be invited for who I was. People were kind and asked me to join them if they went out to eat, but I always felt like an intruder, and I believe God put that desire in my heart because he knew I would accept a dinner invitation in no other way. He set me up, in a good way. Then this handsome stranger needed a haircut, and that was a sore spot with me. My former husband had used the haircut scheme several times to draw other women into affairs, and I certainly didn't want to become a notch on someone's belt. I thought if I charged him $10, that would discourage him, and he would go find a barber somewhere else. Again, God had us right where he wanted us. When he didn't have the full $10 and asked me to lunch, I couldn't refuse his offer, and that was the start of something beautiful, even if it was scary. At least we took turns being afraid, which kept us from calling it quits. Only 4 months later, we married on February 22nd, 1979. We should have known life was going to be an adventure together when our honeymoon plans were snafu'd by a winter storm that closed the pass in front of us. Plan B worked just as well, and we enjoyed a weekend exploring Yakima and Ellensburg. 8 days after our marriage, Jim developed a high fever and ended up in the hospital for 8 days with mononucleosis, also known as kissing disease. Due to its highly contagious nature and our recent honeymoon, the doctor told me I would absolutely get it, but I didn't. God knew I didn't have time to be sick, so he protected me. 6 months later, Jim ran across the list in the bottom of my jewelry box and asked me what it was. I had never even told him about the list because I didn't want him to feel pressured into a relationship. He was amazed by the details behind what brought us together, and we rejoiced again at God's goodness to us. Through all the years and challenges, God has been faithful. Even when we didn't understand our circumstances, he remained the same, our rock and strong tower. For years, as Jim struggled with health issues, he teased me that he wanted me to put on his grave, "I told you I was sick." I remember telling him one time that if he had the audacity to die first, I wasn't promising him anything. Ultimately, I used the verse that brought us together to mark the place where our bodies will await the trumpet call. Delight yourself in the Lord, and he will give you the desires of your heart.